Now we're going to hear from Nazli Tarzi, who's an independent journalist, and she's going to talk about heroines.
Yes, I'm going to talk about Iraqi women and their role in theatre, and the reason for that is the rise and fall of dramatic arts in Iraq, I think, is emblematic of the destruction of the country on a whole. I was born in Iraq many years ago, but I left at an age too young to have formed any tangible memories or any real takeaways. So I'm not going to talk about my personal life experiences, and I'm sure nobody in this room is short of an example of a strong Iraqi woman. You just probably need to look to your right or your left-hand side, and they're there. So I'm going to talk about Iraqi women and their making and staging of theatre. But before I do so, I'd like to take a small note to commemorate Nahida Ramah, who today died, who's a very known Iraqi heroine. She performed in plays such as The Thirsty, The Palm Tree, The Neighbours. Not in London, I believe in Iraq. She was in Baghdad last I heard, but she passed away today. So this presentation is in loving memory of Nahida. In more stable times, art, music, poetry, literature, and theatre were all celebrated art forms in Iraq. The history behind each, however, has either been reduced to an omissible footnote or omitted altogether. A case in point is Iraq's localized theatre industry, suffused with cultural relics, historical tales, and the locally recognizable dialect. The plays performed over the years operate at different levels: the political, the social, the religious, and the cultural. They're timeless. In the 10 minutes I have today, I hope to revive moments of this history, snapshots, if you like, to place women back in the limelight. Flicking through the pages of our dusty history books, I bring out of the dark some of Iraq's beloved actresses and playwrights. Their timeless contributions have been forgotten, but as an Iraqi raised away from home, as is the theme of today's event, the memory of their past must be remembered if we are to challenge what's happened to our country today. The story doesn't begin in Iraq, but in Syria, where Arab theatre emerged in the form of shadow puppetry and oral storytelling. Iraq's theatrical debut was slightly delayed, but also emerged through the collective efforts of priests and Christian teachers in the last quarter of the 19th century. These formative years welcomed a trial period of dramatic expression, seeing theatre houses bear their own artistic fruits, despite lagging behind neighbouring countries. Iraqi theatre remained, as historians have traced, an amateur endeavour compared with other theatric centres in the Arab world, such as Egypt and Syria. Till today, Mosul is still considered the birthplace of Iraq's localised theatre and its first playwrights. The earliest plays have been likened to Europe's medieval morality plays, vehicles used for disseminating religious ideas and morals. The earliest dramas were performed in Christian schools and largely catered to Christian audiences. Dominican priest and poet Hannah Habash is considered the first pioneering scribe whose work sat within the European morality play mould. Theatrical directions eventually shifted. The art form throughout the course of the 20th century migrated to the capital, Baghdad, with the emergence of new artistic troupes. Their works inspired venue improvisation, firstly to accommodate the newfound appetite and thirst for theatre, but secondly to accommodate female spectators. Newly improvised sites for these performances opened up female-only or female-friendly zones in an effort to overturn the exclusion of female viewers. Adid al-Klaychi describes how this was achieved during the Amoriya conquest play, staged in 1923 by the Iraqi Awareness Club, Nadi al-Intibah al-Arabi. Adjacent rooftops to the rooftops where the play was performed would be reserved for women, for them to watch the performance from. The year 1925 marks another watershed moment in the history of Iraqi theatre for women. Mahmoud Nazim wrote a play titled Al-Fatat al-Iraqiyya, the Iraqi girl, dedicated to every mother and every female hand that serves the well-being of this country. I dedicate the first work in honor of the Iraqi woman, a symbol of honesty and pure virtue. The play addressed themes of emancipation and dramatized on stage the distinguished role of women in society. So moving now on to the acceptance of women in theatre. So this is a new era. The Iraqi state's recognition of dramatic arts as an academic field of study helped shed some of society's conservative ideas that were holding back dramatic development. Nahida Ramah became the first woman to ascend to the theatrical stage in the mid-50s, and following in her footsteps was Madiha Saeed, performing as part of the National Theatre Troupe established by esteemed actor and director Haqqi Shibli. She was the first woman that challenged existing societal conventions. Her response to an advertisement Shibli publicised for female actresses ruffled the feathers of society that rejected gender parity. Saeed and her two daughters began working at the theatre Shibli had established, but after Shibli's departure to Paris, the troupe's popularity waned. His absence also produced a corresponding drop in the quality of the plays the troupe staged. Despite the scarcity of female actresses, rumour has it that Saeed was fired, but for reasons that were never made public. Thereafter, Saeed gravitated towards other arts, notably dance, becoming quite popular in nightclubs that were also spreading at the time in the capital. Her dedication to theatre never ended, however, as she continued to support the industry financially even after her career change. As Iraqi theatre reached its zenith in the 50s and 60s, the field welcomed greater visibility of women. This is not to assume no hurdles existed for female performers, but a wind of change could finally be felt. These years witnessed the rise of dramatist Awataf Naim, a household name and distinguished playwright who graduated from Baghdad College of Fine Arts. She wrote prolifically, producing a total of 30 plays for the national troupe. Her pen, as authors remarked, was stronger than any other, adapting famous plays to suit the local context, as well as producing unique content. Her work speaks to a feminist repertoire, scratching the surface of themes no woman before her dared to. Naim was not alone in leaving her mark in theatre. Her sister Iqbal followed suit. Succumbing to patriarchal attitudes, however, at the time, her mother and father disapproved and they banished the pair for doing the unspeakable. We don't have any women, ما عندنا بنات يسوون هيك في العائلة. Where the words of that Awataf remembered and said recently on a TV interview, the notoriety they gained as pioneers of theatre won the family back. Their sense of shame was replaced by pride in their daughters. Naim served theatre on her own terms, climbing the professional ladder in defiance of the snide remarks thrown her way as a woman. In the course of challenging these, she established the Children's Theatre of Baghdad in 1996. She also married esteemed Iraqi actor and director Aziz Khayoun. Other unsung thespians and actresses from the same era include Fatima Rubay'i, Salima Khayr, Siam Sabti, Ghazwa Khalida, Zadohi Samuel, Zakiya Khalifa, Nahida Ramah, rest in peace, who passed away today, and Shada Salim. And then we have Yusuf Al-Ani, who is not a woman, but his People's Theatre did produce works such as Shakir, I Am Your Mother, which of course also encouraged society to shift some of its thinking towards women. The portrait of the woman, as we see in Shakir, I Am Your Mother, was used to embody the ideals of the revolution in 1958 through the characters of Shakir, her daughter Kawathir, and the neighbour Sadiq, whose personalities of steel turned stereotypes of the female pacifist on their head. Annie produced other plays equally as popular, which I sadly don't have time to discuss. Many of Iraq's pioneering directors and writers during these years were not only integral to the emergence of new theatrical currents, but they led the way and used their fame and talent to challenge society's perceptions and how women were being represented. As the war with Iran began to escalate in the 80s, theatre productions did not cease, as one might expect, but theatre peaked with the rise of commercial comedies, and some but fewer serious plays. Following the invasion with Kuwait and the imposition of UN-ordered sanctions in August 1990, theatre was no longer able to support itself as it had in the past. No different to other entertainment sectors, theatre had to adapt to survive. In doing so, it moved in the direction of commercial theatre to slapstick comedy, مسرح الهرج والمرج. Here we see the degradation of women assigned to roles such as the dancer, exhibiting exaggerated female qualities and indelicate attitudes towards them. Some critics argue that the acting on display even lacked serious talent. With the advent of the invasion in 2003, theatre productions disappeared altogether, and houses were shuttered until recently. Some, but not all of them, some of the ones that were flattened in 2003 have risen back out of the ashes, but no thanks to the state, that is. It's the community who wants to, that yearns for self-expression, that have volunteered to rebuild these houses. Even beneath today's adverse conditions, theatre remains alive. Iraq's National Theatre reopened in 2003, but fringed with T-walls, concrete walls, to shield the artistic community from blasts. The doors of Rashid Theatre also welcomed audiences back for the first time in almost a decade last year in 2016. Many of the former startlets left the country, making way for new female directors and playwrights. In this climate, we have the rise of political theatre and a deluge of Mesopotamian mythologies and war-themed dramas. The past is brought into conversation with the present, underscoring the betrayal, harm, and suffering the nation is still living under. Novelist Gasha Fadl's play Ishtar in Baghdad tells the story of a goddess of war, sex, and power after she returned to Baghdad on a mission to restore the country back to its former beauty. Instead, the ugliness of war presided. Goddess Ishtar and Tammuz, the goddess of food, were arrested, and they were captured by Americans, they're thrown in prison and tortured in a way that mirrors what took place during the sordid Abu Ghraib scandal that is still etched in the memories of everyone here today in the Iraqi nation. Another play, The Widow, whose author's identity has never been made public, is another political drama. The protagonist, like his author, an exiled Iraqi, is brought back to Iraq by his sense of guilt for abandoning a widow that he left pregnant. On his return, he became a victim of the violence he escaped in a cathartic turn of events. The Widow, unlike Ishtar in Baghdad, is one in a long series of Iraq's theatre in exile. And to conclude, this matter of fact of theatre in exile, be it theatre, be it art, be it poetry, is a matter of fact that applies to all arts in Iraq, because they have only survived in exile rather than inside of the country. So tonight's theme is, of course, home away from home, and I wanted to just, not forget the heroines of the past, but also make the point that the environment that has come to the surface since America's invasion has not been welcoming to artists. Many of the female actresses have been abandoned, left in old people's homes to die, and they only get attention when it suits political actors who want to boost their profile or rally votes in the run-up to an election. So I think it's also important to say that the memory of the past, this sense of exile, loss, belonging, lack of belonging, still informs their work, and it should never really be forgotten.